U.S. history lesson during the Cold War. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about yesterday's trivia question, which was, what was considered the first rock and roll song back in 1951? And that was Rocket 88 by Ike Turner and Jackie Brenston, who's the one that sang the song. So if you got that right, congratulations. Now you know something about a little bit of the rock and roll era back then. Alright, so let's get into today's lesson, which is on the Korean conflict or the Korean War, which we're going to talk about at the beginning. Now, this is something that's interesting because really it wasn't classified as a war, but yet it was classified as a conflict, but yet in history classes we call it the Korean War. And this lasted from 1950 to 1953 with communism versus capitalism. The North Korean peninsula, which was part of the communist bloc, and then the southern part of the Korean peninsula, which was democratic. And how this started, we're going to go into that today, and we're going to talk about the beginning. All right, so the United States and the Soviet Union were at odds because one was communist and one was capitalist. And the conflict happened over different philosophies and how a country should be run economically and politically. So that's what took place in the Korean Peninsula. But this is how it started when the conflict took place. So, before it started, basically the Japanese were occupiers during World War II, and they occupied most of Southeastern Asia and took it over basically for its resources so that they could run their war machine. Well, when they lost World War II and surrendered to the United States, they left. And what happened was the Soviet Union were the ones that occupied the northern part of Korea, and the United States occupied the southern part of Korea, which already started a conflict. And it was divided by a line, as we know today, called the 38th parallel. And what is that? Of course, that's the line that currently and was historically dividing North and South Korea. And what happened here was two different philosophies, communism versus capitalism. And neither wanted to budge from that because they didn't want the other one to spread to the other side. Okay? So taking a look at this, of course, it's that old adage, the whole thing that this is on is communism versus capitalism. Which philosophy is going to win over different countries around the world? And that's what this conflict was about. All right, so as the Soviets and the Americans left the Korean Peninsula, the North decided it wanted to reunite the Southern Korea with itself to take together to put one country. However, South Korea did not want to become communist, and North Korea did not want to become capitalist. So the North, back in 1950, decided to invade the southern part of Korea and to take it over. Now, they would have won really early on because they had really no resistance going into the South from the Southern government and or its military. But what happened was the United Nations voted, along with the United States, to send troops over and to boost up what the South Koreans had, and basically pushed the North Koreans all the way back to the mountains near China. And this was a conflict that was going to go back and forth all the 3 years that it was in. But early on, the North Koreans pushed the Southern Koreans back, and then the United States and the United Nations got involved and pushed them back north. It would keep going back and forth for this whole conflict. All right, so basically what we did was an overview of how this whole thing started, and now we're going to end today with our trivia question. And our trivia question is, who was the general in charge of the United Nations troops while they were in Korea? You can type in that answer in the message part down below here on YouTube, or you can message me privately if you know the answer to this. All right, tomorrow we're going to look at part 2 as we talk about the war in Korea. And then on Friday, we'll talk about part 3, which was the ending of the Korean conflict or the Korean War. Take care, guys. We'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow.